Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the next Wasteless World Talks with Kevin and Bill. Today's topic, responsibility. And I cannot start different than with Kevin. Kevin, if you close your eyes and you hear the term responsibility, what came first to your mind?
These days, responsibility for me is who's picking up the bill. It's no longer, I think responsibility used to be a personal thing, but these days it's a collective thing. And somehow we're all being made responsible if we want to or not. And it's usually to clean up someone else's mess. So that becomes our responsibility if we want it or not.
Very interesting. And the same question to you, Bill.
The first thing that came to my mind, and I have to apologize, is a vision of my father. He was very big on responsibility, not so big on rights, which we hear so much about today, but much more on responsibility. And I will use Kevin's word, collective responsibility, but also personal responsibility. So the second thing that came to mind was when you say the word responsibility, does that imply that there is a responsibility to somebody? So, well, maybe it's to myself, maybe it's to society, maybe it's to my children, but it implies, I think, a responsibility to, and why have I inherited this debt to somebody? Do I owe it? Is my responsibility to, I don't have answers to any of these questions. I just have more questions.
It's great because, we ended last time, we ended with the terms that the Declaration of Human Rights, it will not be called new. It will be called Declaration of Human Rights and Responsibilities. Because I think, and this is my next question to you, do you think, Kevin and Bill, that a responsibility are different than that a right exists without responsibility?
It absolutely does not. They are paired. They are inseparable. You don't have one without the other. But that's not understood. I don't think that that's the collective wisdom. That's just my opinion.
Kevin.
No, I agree as well. If we're assuming rights, then we assume the responsibilities that go with them. You can't have one without the other.
Listening to that, just imagine any of the protests on the streets, especially the young people going there, asking for the rights. Have you ever seen a single board asking for responsibility? I have not. What was interesting at the noon discussion, Pat mentioned that she is a nurse, or she was a nurse for 20 years. And she mentioned the term collectivism. No, collegialism, sorry, collegialism. And in my country, there was a term collectivism, very popular in communist time. Everybody, the group was responsible. What was interesting, if you ask someone in the group, who will do the job? The answer was someone. I would like to meet one day a guy named someone, because he must be the richest guy in the world. He has so many jobs in so many companies, because every time someone will do. Must be unbelievable guy. Or a lady, maybe, I don't know. So, but she's using the term collegialism. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, with the colleagues in the hospital. When one nurse has already finished, she never left before helping the others to finish. So it was this working together. And that was very interesting in the connection with the responsibility. And I think you are right that someone tear these two apart. We have the rights, but nobody speaks about the responsibilities.
And it's interesting with responsibility because with responsibility comes blame. You know, the question, who is responsible for this? You know, it's a strange way of accusing people by claiming that they have responsibility to sort it out, to clean it up, to do whatever. And of course, it becomes all of our problem quite quickly. If it's a responsibility, then we're all going to have to pay for it, because those who are really responsible aren't responsible at all. Because the giants, they can get away with it day in, day out. And it's us who winds up being made responsible, clean up the mess.
Bill, you have something to add?
Yeah, well said. In the business world, we used to say that if too many people have the responsibility, then nobody has the responsibility. And so we would narrow it down. You're going to do this by this date, you're going to do this by this date, and we would narrow it down so you don't have this collectivism where everybody stands around in a circle pointing at the next guy. And it's interesting that you bring up, Kevin, the word blame. Also in the business world, why is it that the blame always runs downhill, right? It's the guy at the bottom. It's not the guy at the top. Are you kidding me? No, somebody sabotaged this whole effort. And it's probably that person at the bottom. And those sort of environments turn my stomach, because there's such a lack of responsibility to the common good at the top.
You know, sorry for the expression which I will use. In Czech language, we don't use to say blame from the top. We say that the shit is falling from the top.
You know, if you saw me pause, I was about to say that, but yes, exactly. It runs downhill.
What is all quite interesting, that the one who asks for the rights ask the others to be responsible for. They never ask themselves. Yesterday, somebody sent me, Katerina sent me generally, information, the European Commission, there is a European Leadership Institute. And this institute is starting with a course. You can pay 100 euro per day and you can join the course. And it's about Leadership 5.0. So I have to laugh, and it's great. And the first question which I put in under the comment, I said, okay, can you explain what was 4, 3, 2, and 1? Because I face this frequently, and especially in logistics. It's a long time ago. I haven't seen it since then. Somebody said Logistics 5.0. And I said, no, there is no 5.0, 4.0, there is logistics. The numbers indicate the tools or the stage of the tools which we use. 1 was maybe my legs, 2 was maybe the horse legs, 3 was whatever and whatever. But it's not the logistic itself, so it's not the leadership. And I'm just really wondering whether this Leadership Institute, fully paid and covered by European Commission, will send me the answer. Slightly doped about it.
You know, we've talked about this before, that when people claim something 5.0, it's purely marketing. They're trying to capture or claim a brand. It is meaningless beyond that. It's self-fulfilling. It means nothing. It means nothing.
Generally, it means something. It means that they don't understand what it is. And that's a great indicator, you know. if there are professors of universities, including the professor of Texas University, who has in bold letters on his profile that he is Industry 5.0 expert, it's not the right direction for the education system, to be honest.
But I thought also it was interesting, this guy who wanted to change the name of Industry 5.0 to something else, merely to claim ownership on it. You know, it's intellectual theft, really.
Generally, they can do, but not a single one of them is persistent and will be able to maintain the same direction if there are hurdles, you know, not a single one. And if they just think that they will name it and that it will become official and public, no, it will not. I don't know how it was with the term robot in 1921. No internet, nothing, but still it spread through the world. I don't know how, to be honest, but maybe I think it must be the message which was in the play included that was so strong that the people adopted the term. Unfortunately, many use it as a manual, not as a warning, not as a warning. So that's another topic. But it was quite interesting. So, and I think that the responsibility is part of every living creature. Somehow, it's inside of us. It's not just a human thing. If the dog will have a small puppies, the mother dog take care. The same as with the other. So I think that it's inside us, which means we can take it out. It's just hidden somewhere, or I don't know, overrun by something else. But I think we can take it out.
I think, I don't know how the news has been in the Czech Republic and in the US, but the British newspapers are full of talk of war. We must prepare for a war with Russia. We're going to go to war with Russia. And this is the most irresponsible talk of our lifetime. It really is. I don't know where it's come from, but it seems to me in the last 5 days, suddenly we must prepare for war. And this is the absolute opposite of responsibility.
Similar is in my country. I have seen that the Polish already call for 1 million people to mobilization, I think, the forces which are somewhere not active. And it was yesterday published. So every single country is preparing. What is interesting, at the same time, the same newspaper published information that Putin is considering to end up the war with some agreement or whatever. So it's in the same newsletter. So it's quite interesting, and I really don't know why, but it seems like to be, maybe it was agreed on Davos again. It's not the pandemic, it's maybe the fear from war. Who knows?
I think to me, when you talk about war, it reminds me of something we talked about a few weeks ago, and that is the media and how the media sells newspapers, and they sell it with tricks like clickbait. They'll have a headline that won't tell you that one piece of information. It'll say a plane crashes and kills all on board. Won't tell you where, won't tell you if there was a famous person on board, won't tell, because they want you to click on that and go to the article and read the article. And when I look around the media, I look at 5 or 6 different places. One of them, everything every day is about Trump. Everything every day, because he's like a magnet. Some people are just so interested in him. And speaking of that, when you talk about responsibility, we have to also talk about people who are very good at avoiding responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. Always somebody else's fault. Avoid responsibility at all costs. Other ones of the media, uh, um, BBC handles its stories very differently. New York Times handles its stories very differently from each other. But it's all to get you to click.
Bill, may I ask you one question? It's regarding, or maybe Kevin, it's regarding the English language. The term clickbait. This is an old term, I suppose.
Clickbait.
Clickbait, okay, clickbait. But
Right.
it's an old term, isn't it? It was used before internet for sure. Or not?
I don't think I don't know. Kevin, do you know the etymology of clickbait? I think a
I,
click is what you do with a computer mouse, so it has to be internet.
Uh-huh.
yeah, I think it is internet based. It is to to get people to click onto your website. So it is a way. It's like fishing. You put a worm in the water.
This is exactly that I was considering that this is exactly the bite which you put during fishing, and that this is the clickbait. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
The worm is the bait.
Yeah, yeah. So
Try and instead of catching a fish, we're catching a click. We're getting you to click, and I get paid however many times you click on my site.
I was just thinking that this is another term which has been hijacked by the IT industry, but probably not. Second information, quite interesting. Pat mentioned one very interesting topic. She is living in Australia. She said, Michael, it's interesting. In Australia, there was never war. And if you get back in a history, the Australia, the first not non-aborigines, has been prisoners sent to Australia. And you know, we have a continent filled with prisoners, and there was no war. And then we have a continent where all prisoners has been moved away, and there is a permanent war. It's very strange. It's very strange. And I don't say that they cannot fight and so on. I don't say that. But the fact is there was no war in a scale which is used in Europe or in the US or so.
I would take that with a very large pinch of salt, Michael, because there are no Tasmanian Aborigines left alive. They don't exist anymore. So call it a war, call it not a war, but a whole people were erased from the world.
I know that this happened. So, but I have the image of a war. I have the image of more than one ethnic group generally to be erased. On the other hand, Hitler tried to erase other ethnic groups. So, but in some way, I was surprised about this information, and I did not study about it. It was just interesting because we have been speaking about the responsibility, and it was so interesting with this connection. So the fact is, and we agree on that, all of us, that it must be a rights and a responsibility. It's must. And to be honest, I start to work on it. And it's not easy to define the responsibility for every human. It's for me much harder than to define the rights. Kevin, we cannot hear you.
I agree. I think one of the interesting things is that, and I don't know the source of the word responsibility, but it seems to me that it's the original meaning must have been self-imposed. It's responsibility is something that you place upon yourself rather than other people place upon you. And certainly in terms of the more rights we assume, the more rights we want, the more responsibility we have to assume at the same time. Otherwise, the rights won't work because someone's rights will be someone else's.
Can you have rights if you do not have responsibilities?
No.
Can you have responsibilities if you don't have rights?
Yes.
I think that's probably possible. But
Yeah.
can you have rights if you do not have responsibilities?
No.
I will say we have it. In some occasions, we have it right now. You know, the politician, they have rights. They don't have responsibility. In fact, they have no obligation. If they will fulfill or not, they will remain politicians. In some way, I think that there is a group of people which have rights because of their having money or whatever, but they don't have the real responsibility.
And I think this is the interesting thing, because then there is a difference between a legal responsibility and a moral responsibility.
Yes. Just few minutes before we started, I have read that the court somewhere in the US decided that Elon Musk cannot get his bonus of 56 million US dollars because it's not good, let's say. So there is explained why. And so his response, I will move the company to other US state. This is his right. Is it moral?
You know, children will stomp their feet and refuse to do something and take their toys and go home if they don't get their way. This is so clear. He and many of the other giants who want to go to outer space. In fact, they even have a race to see who can be the first giant to go to outer space. And then they build a spaceship that looks like a phallic symbol.
I am looking
So,
forward.
whereas they need the optics. Do they not understand what that looks like? What all of their just the way they act, the optics of the way they act it's laughable. It's laughable.
I just saw 2 days ago somebody from India posted a picture of some sacral buildings in India, and it looks exactly like the rocket. Exactly the same, very high and all this stuff. And they said, yeah, probably. And there was quite interesting explanation. Few years ago, there show up images of a church, middle-aged church, and there was really a spaceman in his suit, and everything was there. And everybody was thinking, okay, it must be a time traveler and whatever. And just recently they discovered it was repaired. And during the repair, some of the workers make it there as his heritage generally. So really crazy stuff. But it took a few years before they discovered. So was this responsibility, or was this his right to leave this heritage over there? Not sure. But I think you are right that the responsibility is the inner one, the moral one, and then there can be other type of responsibilities. But I think the moral one is exactly the one which is inside us, which will help us to change the world, to build the wasteless world, because it is simple to be understood. It does not cost us. That's interesting point as well. It does not cost us anything to be responsible. It's not a matter of money. It's a matter of will, maybe. Kevin, Mike.
There's an interesting connection between responsibility and duty. So, you know, if Elon Musk moves his company to another state so he can get more money, is it a responsibility or a duty to his workers that he doesn't do that, because they clearly are not going to be able to move? And you would like to think that it's it is a responsibility because that is self-imposed rather than duty which is imposed by others.
Elon Musk does not care about his workers. Who, who, you're losing all credibility if you come up with that argument.
It's quite interesting that just in the first month there has been lost or more than 10,000 people in IT only has been Google and Microsoft and all these guys fired. PayPal 2,500 people announced today, I think. All of them losing their jobs. And what is more interesting, some of them losing it because of the result of the jobs they created, means AI and the technology. That's interesting.
I heard an interesting story coming out of Hollywood, where translators were paid to translate Japanese films into American, and Japanese, especially Japanese cartoons, is it's a very serious business in Japan, and it's a very kind of it's a high art form. And these people decided that they would not translate them, but reinterpret them and put in more woke interpretations on instead of following the originals. And what has happened is that when the Japanese found out, they said, okay, no more people, will only use AI from now on, which is an amazing story of how you can destroy your own jobs.
But honestly, isn't that something that's been going on for thousands of years? The whole Industrial Revolution and the assembly lines and so on. And yet, in this country, there are 5 million people looking for a job, and there are 10 million jobs looking for people. And that's why our unemployment rate is 3 point something. It's never been that low. So I think with AI and machine learning and all that, yes, it's going to put people out of a job. The physical, the boring. I've watched people taking parts out of a press machine and inspecting them, put the calipers on them, inspecting them, pass, fail, then the next one. For 8 hours? Are you kidding me? What do you think the accuracy rate after 8 hours is? That's the job that needs to be, there should be a computer doing that job. Come on. And people then can learn an additional skill or task and move up and be better. And so it's that we're putting so many people out of work is actually a good thing for them given the long run, and shows a responsibility that the companies need to upskill and retrain. It's the company's responsibility to do that.
I think that it is important to understand that for me, and AI is a tool. It depends on me how I will use it, good or bad. I can use it both ways. But the question is that generally the last sentence, you said the companies are responsible for reskilling. This is what the companies do not do. They fire. They don't care. And even the governments and so they don't care. They said, okay, we will produce more. That's great. We will have more money. And they don't consider that if they will produce more in a country where more people will be unemployed because of many reasons, that nobody will buy this stuff. It's so simple. This analogy is very simple. And it's strange that the people don't see it. Even the companies don't see it.
Well, the companies don't see it because the companies have the power. Traditionally, the companies have had the power. They can make a decision. There are no consequences. And that's another word that we should work in here with the definition of responsibility is consequences. So the companies do not, they have the power. The boss can decide who's got a job and who doesn't, what they get paid, what they get taught, and so on. And when a mistake happens, when a tragedy or a bad thing happens, then they find the scapegoat. And that's what companies, that's what the giants do. And that's their whole mentality is find somebody who's responsible. Because it ain't me. I- I'm not responsible for that bad thing. I didn't teach them. I didn't hire the right skills. I didn't engage them. Um, it's not, but it's not me. It's somebody messed up. It's operator error, right? In failure analysis, it is never operator error, right? That's the first thing they teach you. It is never operator error. It might be that you didn't train that person, but that then is the responsibility of the bosses. I'll get off my soapbox, but the responsibility of companies is something that, boy, we should talk a whole lot more about that one.
And I think, Bill, the interesting thing from what you were saying is that whatever you think of a lot of the giants, none of the giants are ever associated with being irresponsible, or it's extremely rare that their actions, if they have to fire 2,000 people, it is because of other consequences. They're taking actions they're responding to, but they're never considered irresponsible. I mean, even BP's blowout in the Gulf of Mexico, I mean, it's totally irresponsible. They should have been drilling that deep with faulty equipment. But all the giants managed to avoid being labeled irresponsible. They have extremely good PR people working for them.
Just before we started, I get a very interesting news. Do you know which is the country in which the floppy disk, so 3.5-inch floppy disk, are still used to hand over some documents to the government office?
Tax office.
Japan. In
Japan?
Japan,
Really?
and they cancel it this week. So from this week,
I'm surprised.
you know, for all of us, Japan has been the top of the technology. And today I have learned that the Japanese government finally decided that they do not have to carry the documents on floppy disk to the office. I even don't know where my last floppy disks are, and very few in the world.
And I have no device that can read a floppy disk.
Exactly.
The laptops, the computers that I bought for the last 10 years do not even have a CD reader on it, right? But how many business cards do you read that still have a fax number on it? Who uses faxes? Come on.
In my country, no, just in a hotel sometime, but on a business card, there is no fax for many, many years. But on the US cards, there are many faxes. That's true. So
I think in the US, I may be wrong, but it used to be that a legal document couldn't be electronic. It had to be physical. So if you was doing a contract in America, it had to be via fax, where you had a physical copy.
That stopped 5 or 10 years ago. I sign everything on my computer now.
I sign nothing, and it's even better.
Good.
We have 4 more minutes to go, but it's quite interesting that who is responsible in the case of the Japanese floppy disk? For sure, not the companies, because they know there exists USB or whatever. Is it the rigidity of the process change, or of the ability to change the structure called country or government or governance? That's a question. And here we are at the top again. So I think
it's great. I think it's somehow, if it works, don't fix it. So of course there's alternatives, but we don't need an alternative. We got something which works. It's kind of very reassuring somehow.
So going back a couple of minutes, is there a different definition for responsibility for you and me than there is for the giants? And who defines the responsibility? Do I define my own responsibility? Because you've already taken duty and laid that aside. Who defines it? I think to a large extent, we define our own responsibility outside of what is legal, the legal duties. And so I think that the giants define their own responsibility. I'm not responsible for that. Or, okay, I'll do that. I'll take responsibility. I can do that. And so there's, I just feel like it's so different from top to bottom.
I think that the giants, they don't define their responsibility, they define their irresponsibilities. That's what they're very good at. We don't have to clean this up. This is not our mess. We're not responsible for this. Your government has to pay for that. We're leaving, you clean up the mess.
They have the lawyers, they have the teams, they have the, insurance company. You sign insurance for everything, and when something happened, all the time they will find that this one was not there. Sorry. I just heard there was a call, emergency call to the insurance, and a car driver says, "Am I insured for crashing an animal?" And they said, "Yes." "What animal?" "It's a fish." He landed in a pond, so it was quite an interesting story. But yeah, you are right. I think that they define the responsibility so that they can go around and they are not responsible at all. And I think we should look for the real definition of responsibility and discuss it or touch it next time, because we have only 1 more minute left. So I would like to thank you for the great time, great discussion again about the responsibility. And I would like to wish everyone, including you, have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all its forms. Stay safe, free, human, and be responsible. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.